Welcome back to BLOCKTV. It's time now for Links in the Chain. November 24th, 2019 marked the official release of Bitcoin Core 19, the 19th major release of Bitcoin's original software client launched by Satoshi Nakamoto almost 11 years ago, and still the dominant Bitcoin implementation on the network today. And I speak now with Aaron van Wirdum, technical editor at Bitcoin Magazine, who has written extensively about the latest update and what it means for the Bitcoin Core network. Aaron, firstly, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so to kick things off, this here, the 19th iteration of the Bitcoin Core network and its update, what are the main takeaways? What are the main focuses we should be drawing on out of this latest update?
Yeah, so to be clear, it's still the same Bitcoin network, right? It's just the 19th major release of the Bitcoin Core software, which is the leading client on the Bitcoin network and has always been. So every half year they bring out a new release. So they work on the new Bitcoin Core releases continuously. The Bitcoin Core developers do that. And every half year they mark a point where they say, all right, everything that's done now, that will be in the new release. So now the 19th major release has been released last week. It's in a way, it's kind of, I think Vladimir, the lead developer, he described it as a modernization. There's nothing very major in this release. There's no new soft fork. There's no like Taproot is a big upgrade that's still coming, but it's an improvement in all sorts of subtle ways and user improvements for users.
Okay, and just getting into the nitty-gritty for a little bit, can you tell us what some of the sort of key points that users should be aware of in terms of this particular update?
Yeah, so a very notable change is that BEG32 addresses are now standard. These are the new address format. They were introduced a couple releases ago, but so far they were optional. And in a way, they're still optional, but you can opt out to the more the previous P2SH standard. So the BEG32, that's SegWit native. So it has a couple of benefits. It detects typos. It's not case sensitive anymore, so you can read an address over the phone, for example, and not mess up with capital letters, that kind of stuff. And it's more data efficient if you use SegWit, because now you don't have to publish the whole SegWit script into an input when you spend the funds. So it's a little bit cheaper to use this. Mm-hmm. That's one. Another example would be that nodes from now on make 2 extra outbound connections to other nodes where they only share blocks. So usually all nodes share blocks and transactions and some additional transaction data with one another. The more connections each node makes, the healthier this is for the network, because it's harder to partition a specific node or a specific part of the network. But the more connections each node makes, it also requires more resources. So this new upgrade has a nifty solution to that, where they make 2 extra outbound connections, but they only share the blocks, not the transactions, it costs a little bit extra resources, but not that much, and it's still much healthier for the network.
All right, so it sounds like they're dealing with some key elements there of sort of security, maintenance, making sure that the system as itself is running smoothly, as you stated. In this 19th iteration, we've seen that sort of essential maintenance taking place. But looking further ahead down the timeline, are we seeing major developments, upgrades expected in future iterations coming along?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Bitcoin Core is basically the backbone of the Bitcoin network, right? It's the main client. So the engineers working on this stuff, they've got security as their main priority. That's what they care about the most. That's what they're focused on more than anything else. As far as upcoming upgrades, Taproot will be a big upgrade. That's a planned soft fork that would introduce a very interesting type of smart contract flexibility onto the Bitcoin network while maintaining data efficiency for these contracts, and even enabling users to hide these contracts into regular transactions. So it's not even clear to blockchain analytics companies that a smart contract was performed at all. That's a very interesting upgrade that's coming. Dandelion is a very interesting upgrade for the peer-to-peer network, offering extra privacy. That's coming. Support for neutrino type of block filters is a work in progress. So even Bitcoin 0.19.0 introduced, furthered this innovation. This would make it much more private to use light clients. So right now, if you're using a light client, you're kind of giving away all of your wallet info, your addresses. You're giving it away to either random nodes on the network or at least to a server somewhere. And with this neutrino solution, light clients would be able to do this much more privately, so they don't necessarily give up their privacy even though they're still using a light client. So that's being worked on. One step was taken in the last Bitcoin Core release. Now a new step is taken in this release, and this will be a work in progress. So maybe in the next release it will be fully available over the peer-to-peer network.
And I want to ask as well, because this is, the sort of updating of security and of new networks, the latest versions, is something that plagues developers around the world, whether we're talking about in mobile, whether we're talking about in operating systems, whether we're talking about in any feature. And the same issues impact Bitcoin and the Bitcoin Core. We had a recent comment that came out from Bitcoin Core developer Luke Dashir, who said that only around 35% of nodes are running the latest version of Bitcoin Core. Do you think that's a risk for the network as a whole, that people aren't necessarily keeping their nodes up to date with the latest version of the Bitcoin client?
No, I would say not. Bitcoin Core developers take a great effort to make sure their software is backwards compatible. So even every new version is still compatible with older versions. And in a way, I think it's very healthy that the network has this slow upgrades process, because that way, first of all, it keeps everyone honest. It makes sure that developers can slip in maybe weird consensus changes, because then their new upgraded version wouldn't be compatible with the rest of the network. But also just more regular bugs. If everyone upgrades at once, I think bugs could have a more nasty effect than if this is sort of a slow process. So I personally think it's very healthy, actually.
All right, an important development for the Sphere, keeping everything open, keeping everyone honest, always a key part in such an open-based consensus project. Aaron van Wirdum, I want to thank you so much for talking to us here at BLOCKTV today and giving us the latest update on this key development in the Bitcoin network. Always progressing, always developing, something for us always to watch. So thanks so much for joining us, and in the meantime, stay with us at blocktv.com for all the latest in news and information. I'm Asher Westrop Evans. Thanks for watching.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.